Hello and welcome to another episode of A Coffee with Chris, the social media show that helps you create impact. As always, brought to you in association with our lovely charity partners, 𝗖𝗵𝗄𝗃, who help local people affected by cancer, and Blue Bear Coffee, replacing your business's coffee to help children that have sadly experienced human trafficking. Today and this week, I have been sipping profusely, because I've been very busy, on their 𝗖𝗵𝗿𝗶𝘀 blend. You can grab yourself a bag from their store in Tombland in Norwich or online. It's an incredible business doing incredible things. So go and support Blue Bear Coffee. It is absolutely delicious. As always, as well as our charity partners, this podcast is proudly sponsored by Oliver Hill of Hill Coaching Company, Limitless Film and Media, Gemma Crane from Mindset HR, and Wingfield Consultants. I am very excited now to talk about a great subject with a great guest. Let's welcome her along. Illustrator, designer, and founder of Ello Design Studios, Elizabeth Martin. Ello Design Studio, for those of you that don't know, is a Norfolk-based creative studio specializing in branding, web design, and what we all want to know about, social media content. Welcome aboard, Elizabeth. Delighted that you've joined us on A Coffee with Chris. Let's start with the why. Why do businesses need a glow up when it comes to their graphics on social media?
I mean, it's a bit of a loaded question. But mainly, as you know, I'm a social media user myself, and so are so many people. And one is obviously brand recognition plays a big part of it, so that people know who you are, what you look like. They instantly know what you do. They remember you is a huge part of it. But also, social media is so saturated nowadays as well. So finding those pinpoints that help your business stand out on those socials, whether it's ads, video, Instagram. I mean, there's so much of it nowadays, but finding those pinpoints to stand out is super important. And actually doing that from a design point of view, not just from a content point of view, but both, definitely helps a lot of my clients to kind of get their foot through the door and get more people liking, commenting, all of the above.
All of it. So with you, Elizabeth. I was so keen to get you on. I'm so impressed with your work and the clients that you're doing it for. They're clearly creating impact on social media because of your graphics, and that seems to be the thing for me. Is I'm seeing a lot of businesses where they're getting their copy right. It seems like their strategy seems quite well aligned. Their messaging is good, but yet their graphics are letting them down. And I wonder if Elizabeth, it's because they don't really know how to start. So I do want to ask you that question. If a business, small, medium, large, comes to you and says, "Hey, Elizabeth, like, where on earth do I start?" Because lots of people will turn to a tool such as Canva, etc. Yeah. And I'd love for you to kind of explain how a brand can go from very basic, boring, detracting graphics to designs that actually speed up the process between prospect and customer through social media.
Yeah, and it's actually not as difficult as I think a lot of people might think it's going to be. Something that I pride myself on collectively is I like to set my clients up with a lot of templates, so visual designs and stuff that they can then use over and over again, because not only does that add consistency and trust to their brand, it also makes it a lot easier, because like as a business worker, we can't do it all 24/7. We can't all have an in-house designer and social media team. I totally get that. But it's not that difficult. Canva is great. I shouldn't say that as a designer, but as a tool for people, it is actually really good. It's always good to kind of do like a brand audit almost. So let's look at what you already have. We don't want to necessarily push it too far that people wonder what on earth are they doing on social media when it has nothing to do with what they're doing. But kind of bringing that brand together, finding a few elements that we can use. So patterns, type, what's your imagery going to look like? You know, what emotions does that provoke? What message is that saying? And putting it together to create a set of, it can just be like 5 to 10 templates that you can churn out. And churning it out sounds like a negative, but in social media, you have to be consistent with it to get results. And if you can be consistent with it in a visual way that's also engaging and the content is great, like you said, then like you're on a bit of like a no-brainer.
Yeah, with you. So just to dig a bit deeper there, Elizabeth, like when it comes to setting up, you know, templates, if you like, for businesses to get on with, which by the sounds of things you do, which we'll talk about later on in the discussion. Are you doing it by the department? Are you doing it by the content pillar? Is it like reviews are looking like this and case studies are like that? How do you go about that? Because I think, again, it's a loaded question. I think businesses are worried that it's going to get boring quite quickly. So how do you kind of get that balance right?
Yeah. So one thing I always say to people is never underestimate just photography and photos and videos. Obviously, you know that video has become a huge thing in social media, and you don't really need design over the top of the video, like maybe a watermark and whatnot. So I'm not suggesting, nor is anyone, to suddenly design every single post and do the same thing over and over again. It's more of a kit of parts that gives you the understanding of your brand and design and what you should do with that for your specific brand. So the majority you're still posting might still be images with your logo always present, which again is brand recognition and something that you want to have out there. It is more a consistency point of view. So when one day you've got an event going on, you want to post about it, you have a set of parts and a set of assets that you can use to do that on your own 2 feet, you know. So it's not a continuous post of the same thing over and over again. She says as my social media is literally like a consistent stream of like the same thing every 3 posts, but it changes for every client, you know. If it really depends what you're doing. An engineering company isn't going to be doing loads of illustration graphics and events, but like a kids wear company is going to have a lot of photography. It really does depend from client to client, but I think it's doing those exercises to find out what they need and what that comes in, like from a design point of view too.
Noted.
I know that's quite like an open-ended answer as well, but it's obviously like the breadth of it is so large. Like it really does change depending on the client.
But it's the real answer, and that's why I love to speak to people like you, Elizabeth, because it's not just a black and white situation, and design is so broad. You mentioned that illustration, and I wanted to come to you on that, Elizabeth, because you balance kind of branding with illustration, if you like, and I wanted to know, how do you go about deciding whether a business needs a nice, cutesy, hand-drawn human touch versus something that's perhaps more slick, more digital? Again, like how does a business get that right? And by the way, let's add in photography and video in there as well. Like, what's your kind of general take and opinion on that?
Again, it depends on the client. In a lot of circumstances, when I work with people, especially in the first phase of working with them, they get options, usually like 3 options. And one of them for me, I did a degree in illustration. It is kind of part of what I specialize in, I guess. And so usually one of those 3 includes some form of illustrative item, and people do seem to gravitate towards it. I think it's because it gives people another asset to kind of story tell and kind of use without it having to be too complicated. But in terms of kind of sitting down with the client and working out whether that works for them, again, it varies, but I think it all depends on the message they're trying to tell. So to come back to kind of the storytelling thing I said, if, you know, they're trying to say the location of somewhere, but they have an audience who are perhaps a bit more Gen Z, a bit more on the younger side, well, actually a really cool, funky illustration might work brilliantly for them to kind of understand it. But if we're going from like a really like historical heritage point of view, you know, actually some really good high quality photography is going to resonate more with an older audience. So I guess target audience brings a lot into it, and just personal preference. Some people just really want it. And if they want it and it's fun and it looks great and it feels right, then I'm never going to stop them, because obviously I also just love doing it.
I'm a bit biased, Elizabeth. I think there's a gap for most people to explore businesses when it comes to illustration on social graphics. People are good with photography. They understand the value of video, how well it performs. But I think illustrated graphics, particularly what I would call visual value, if you like, how a client's gone from A to B to Y to Z, and showing people the customer journey. You know, lots of people are kinesthetic learners, right? They like to see things and they need to see A to B. And I just think so many businesses aren't exercising that opportunity on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Facebook through you know, carousel sliding posts and things like that. Is that something that you advocate as well?
Yeah, like kind of that visual guide. And also just to like reiterate, like I think people can get quite overwhelmed with a kind of an illustrative asset of being like, well, what if we want it for this and this and this, and then we need 10 more, and then we need 10 more. And that is something that as a designer as well as an illustrator, I've come to learn to not overcomplicate them either. So again, to have a set of illustrations for your brand that work, that you can use in different scenarios, but you don't have to home in on a real direct message. I mean, if you're doing like a proper campaign, maybe you add a couple in, you know, when you want them. But we also don't want to rely on them on a sense that all of a sudden it's going to take you hours and a designer to like post about it. So it's all about it being accessible and easy to use, which is always important to remember.
Absolutely. You know, we've kind of fast forwarded a little bit, Elizabeth. Actually, I want to rewind actually, because we've done like the content bit, but before that, if we're publishing content out onto a LinkedIn, a Facebook, and Instagram, but we're driving them back towards a profile page where their social media ship is not set to sale. It is a car crash. The branding's all over the place. It's perhaps quite old school. You can barely see the font. They don't have a cover photo, but if they do, it's not selling their business well. So I'm sure that that's something that you've got quite a strong opinion on as well, right? Because it's all very well and good, you know, creating all of these fancy illustrations from yourself, but have you worked on a project before, perhaps where you've done logo for profile page, cover banners, and what sort of thing are you seeing work for businesses in that area?
In terms of what works, again, consistency, really good, strong kind of typefaces, information. I think a lot of the times things can get overcomplicated, which creates a negative impact. So sometimes you have clients that will use lots of different typefaces, lots of different types of images and illustrations. And again, honing it back into that consistency to build trust. I mean, how many companies do you interact with on social media that you're like, you know exactly who they are straight away, you know what they're selling, there's no crazy glittering gif that someone stuck on there, or like wonky text put to one side, which actually drives me mad. You look at it and you see it's a brand and you see it's a trusted, you know, company. And if you have that consistency from a design point of view, that's only going to gain more people to follow along or shop or whatever kind of your main goal is.
Yeah, I love that. I think there's something in simple and often which people don't say a lot, meaning rather than overcomplicated and generic and it lives there forever. What I'm seeing businesses do a lot with their kind of cover banners and profile aesthetics at the moment, Elizabeth, I'm not sure what you're seeing, but people are changing it. If not seasonally, they're doing it by campaign too, right? So they've got pre-existing audiences, they're trying to push something in particular. It's strong and simple, but it's one image, it's one font face, it's easy to grasp. Again, is that something that you would recommend or not? You're welcome to disagree.
No, I actually do. I think one thing that's really important is to have your core. So you have kind of your core set of assets that you're always going to use. So again, that comes back to the kind of the brand recognition and consistency. But by all means, you've got a cool campaign coming out or a Christmas campaign, or what's that going to look like for a seasonal piece? That's when you then add the next layer, and you can get really fun, really creative with that and get more people involved and see how much you can push it. But what we mustn't do is like disregard the brand completely, because then you lose all the hard work that you've just done and created. So yeah, I totally agree. There's a level of like upping it, but I always see that as a bit more of like a blanket over the top, or like another level. Like, just can't disregard that foundation, because then people aren't going to know who you are. They'll be like, oh great, a Christmas product, but you just like, who's doing it, or like who's posting. And I think that's important.
Yeah, me too, Elizabeth. I think there is a balance to be struck as well, right? Because I see businesses and brands either doing one or the other. They seem to be doing everything time sensitive, ad hoc, particular. There's no foundation. There's no sort of baseline of core kind of brand elements. But on the other end, there's people that just have the basic stuff, and hey, that's okay, by the way, because it's better than not. Don't do those seasonal kind of campaigns, tweaked, bespoke stuff. So it's the balance to be struck. Must ask you about a client of yours now, Elizabeth. I love to ask about a real life example of a client where you've taken them from A to B, an example where you've really helped a client perhaps with their social media graphics or something of such, where you've gone, actually, no, that was a good opportunity and a good usage of your skills and expertise.
Yeah, well, I've actually been working for the last, like over 2 years now with 𝗖𝗵𝗁𝗶𝘀, which a local company. Big up 𝗖𝗵𝗿𝗶𝘀. Their chocolates are great. Everybody try them. And ice cream, everything, all the above. And they haven't paid me to say that either. But I basically got brought in for mostly design to kind of work freelance with them and kind of build it up. But also I've kind of taken the social media under my wing, and I work closely with their marketing manager on it. And we went through a whole process of creating a style guide for socials. So creating that foundation and base that we just talked about, and saying, okay, well, what does that look like as a day-to-day? What kind of themes will we always go down? What typefaces are we using? What highlight icons, and what will ads look like? And I mean, you could go on for quite a while. But one great thing with them is they then do work on that campaign basis. So when there's a new product coming out, we all sit down and we creatively brainstorm what that's going to look like. But that foundation is always in place, and they didn't used to do that as much. And we've been able to kind of push it even further, and their socials keep growing, and we've delved into video a lot more. Some pain points we found with video is that it started to look a bit inconsistent on the grid. Again, it's very Instagram based, but this goes over all socials, but it started to look a little messy. And we even just made a template that was like a colored cover. So it kind of meant that people recognized that that was going to be a new informative reel. And there's little tweaks that we've made to help people recognize it, that it's 𝗖𝗵𝗿𝗲 straight away, regardless of what that content is. And I think that's been a really important step for them, and it seems to be working. So
yeah, no, I've seen them. I've seen your stuff. Big up 𝗖𝗵𝗿𝗲. Big up to them for trusting you to execute for them, Elizabeth. I think you're doing a marvelous job. You bring up such a good point there. So many businesses are forgetting cover banners on Instagram, amongst others as well.
Yeah, all of them. But
if your videos are random, if your aesthetics random, that's okay, because we're not exactly in a world now where you have to be so regimented with your feed. No. But you are right, Elizabeth. There is a balance to be had, and I think a way in which you can do that properly is by, if it's a random video, just making sure you're getting a bespoke cover banner ready so that you can upload that over the top. That's something that businesses can do, right?
Well, there's just tiny little wins that actually do make quite a big difference once you start kind of using them consistently. And I mean, it's literally a color overlay with the text, the typeface that they use on it. It's nothing like groundbreaking at all. That's not what we're trying to do. It's just creating that consistency and making it look clean. And, you know, 𝗖𝗵𝗿𝗲𝗲 are a bit more of a high-end brand, so people are paying good money on the gift boxes and treating people, and then when they search up 𝗖𝗵𝗿𝗲, they don't want to see, you know, a sporadic accumulation of different things. You know, they want to see a trusted brand that looks like it's being run well, which it is, and make sure that, you know, they want to shop from there. And from an ad point of view as well, obviously, like, those socials can be seen by anybody. So that's got to be a really good first impression, whether it's video or graphic, to make that person click through and either remember or shop straight away.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the real world brand needs to represent the online brand as well. And that's something, there's definitely a gap for a lot of people with that, Elizabeth, where it's like their product, their packaging, their website, even, like, it looks swish, but then their socials all over the place. And that's something that someone like yourself can work on. We've spoken about all of the lovely, great things that people should do, Elizabeth, but what are the things that people should avoid? What are the things that you see on your social media feed and it gives you the design ick?
I have so many.
Okay, I'll give you 5 minutes.
Okay, you'll cut me off, right? One of my biggest pet peeves, and I don't see it this often, and I'm really sorry if anyone's out there and that's doing it, but please stop, is people that post kind of like printed flyers that they've got done, but like just as the flyer online. Like, it's not that difficult to adapt something to social media, and like flyers have so much content on, and that's great for a flyer, but please adapt it like to digital, like to social, and when it's in the wrong kind of like format as well, that does just kind of drive me mad a little bit. Also, and a real controversial one, and people can disagree, but posting square on Instagram is also a bit of my pet peeve.
Yeah, it's getting cut off now, isn't it? It's got to 4x3 now, people. We're not square anymore. And as well, Elizabeth, let me just come in there as well. I think people were initially a bit like, oh God, I've got to make something with a different canvas size, and all my other platforms are the same. No. Create them 4x3 and run them on omni-channel, because whether it be LinkedIn, Facebook, etc., you can still use the same size Instagram canvas on those other platforms and take up more feed space. Therefore, I'm getting geeky now, increasing dwell time, therefore stopping the scroller, right? So that is something that you should do, Elizabeth. I agree with you massively.
Yeah, and it makes it easier. You no longer have to weirdly crop something that you've created, especially from a design point of view. If it's got text on, like, you don't need to worry about it anymore. And from a photography point of view as well, like, I can hear my boyfriend in my ear. Like, he hates when he does some great photography and it gets cropped into an awkward square, you know, so we don't need to do that anymore. So if we all just collectively not crop to square, it would make me really happy. So thanks, everybody.
There's 3, you know, great mistakes for people to avoid there. Elizabeth, this has been brilliant. We could probably do 3-4-hour-long workshops on design for social, but I'd love you to drive people in a direction that suits you. Like, where can people do business with you and your brilliant business?
Yeah, so there's 2 main ways to find me, maybe 3. Social media, obviously, believe it or not, who'd have thought it. You can find my socials at 𝐿ostudio.co. So I'm very active on Instagram, as that's how I get a lot of traction in clients and kind of a community of designers, where I actually put out a lot of education on social stuff, so people can find out more there. Also, just on my LinkedIn, which I'm sure it should be tagged in here, but it's just Elizabeth Martin. And if you want to have like a proper chat or put a proper inquiry in, 𝐿odesign.co is my website, which is easy to navigate, believe it or not, as a website designer. So also feel free to get in contact on there. Yeah,
and do that, people, if you're watching back, listening back. And Elizabeth is one of these sadly few people that actually bothers to practice what they preach. And you can go on Elizabeth's feed on Instagram and you can really get a good sample of what excellent looks like when it comes to social media graphics and design. So big up to yourself, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for sharing so much value on A Coffee with Chris today. Yeah,
thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you very much. And thank you so much to everyone that's watching back, listening back. If you've enjoyed this conversation on A Coffee with Chris, or hey, you want to ask a question, I'm sure Elizabeth won't mind answering any questions you've got. Why not tag in the comments section below myself, Elizabeth, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. If you're watching on YouTube, give this a thumbs up. If you're watching on iTunes or SoundCloud, give us a 5-star review. And I look forward to seeing you this time next week for another episode of A Coffee with Chris.